Hello, my name is Zoe Streeter, and today I am here with Greg Benz, friend and colleague of distinguished alumni Peter Denitz. What is your relationship to Mr. Denitz?
Well, I met Peter in grad school. We were both in the urban planning program at Princeton University. And it just so happened we were both from the Lehigh Valley. We hadn't known each other in high school, but he was at Parkland, I was at Bethlehem Catholic. We probably crossed paths through Key Club, and we had some common friends and acquaintances. But it was in grad school that we met. And then later, I was running the planning department at a company called Parsons Brinkerhoff, a large consulting planning and engineering firm, running the office out of New York. And I needed someone with Peter's skills, so I hired him out of the City of Philadelphia Planning Department.
So, can you describe just a little bit about his career, what you do, how you work together?
Sure. Well, Peter and I both had a background in urban planning. My direction was more in the transportation planning field. Peter was more in the land use community planning side, but those two fields mesh a lot. So on a number of projects, Peter and I worked together where I was planning some new rail transit projects, particularly down in Maryland and Washington and up in New Jersey. And Peter was on the side of making sure those rail transit projects were integrated well with the community and the surrounding neighborhoods. In particular, one up in New Jersey, up in the Hoboken, Jersey City area, Peter was responsible for integrating the ART program, which was making sure that the new transit stations were not just utilitarian structures, but had reflected the community, and particularly using artists from the nearby community to make sure that the station reflected the environment in which it was setting.
What accomplishments did he have during his career?
Well, he had a number, not only, first in the area of specific projects. As I mentioned, the project up in New Jersey is a real monument to his ability to work with diverse groups, connecting the technical and the political and the community concerns. He also had a number of one of the most significant projects towards the end of his career was down the Philadelphia area around the 30th Street station, which many of you may be familiar with, which has this beautiful station, old classical style station, sitting among a bunch of railroad and kind of industrial type facilities. And Peter helped lead the envisioning of a whole total redevelopment of that area to be a more lively community, office, commercial, residential, other type of community facilities. But I think in the other area that Peter and I worked together on, were internal to our company, we had a number of professional development programs that help people really figure out a path for how they should pursue their career and advance it. And Peter was one of the real stalwarts of those programs in terms of really being sensitive to each individual's own style and needs and sort of path that they wanted to take.
What kind of person was he, and how did he impact those around him?
Well, I would say Peter was insightful, and I'll say thoughtful, and I say thoughtful in a way that when Peter talked, people listened. He was not the first one to jump in with a comment or a reaction to something. He usually sort of let a group discussion go on a while, and then he would really had a way of pulling it all together and saying it in a very precise and way that really captured and helped advance the discussion. He was meticulous, almost to a fault. He was very precise in his wording, in his writing, in his speech. So but it was very meaningful. And as I say, when he said something, people sat back and really paid attention to it. It wasn't just roll over their head.
What was his relationship with his family like?
Well, he was fairly well and enjoyed his family. I got to know his wife Beth very well. I got to know his kids, and I particularly knew his parents back when we were in grad school. And it was always a delightful time when we were with his family. We got invited, even though we were living in New York and he was down in Maryland, and he was living in Philadelphia. We often got invited to a number of family events, and they were always a lot of fun, a lot of occasions. A very interesting family in terms of their backgrounds and interests and so on. As you may know, his mother was a very talented artist, and she was always a lot of fun to talk with.
What are your best memories of him?
Peter had a very a sense of humor that was could really get you going. You know, it just was a lot of fun to have a conversation. He could really be ironic at times. But I think my favorite memory is when we were finishing grad school. We had to prepare a thesis, and we had to defend it before a panel of professors. And that was the culmination of your career. Once you passed that, you're going to get your degree. And we had all of our thesis defense on a particular afternoon, and we'd all finished. We all were successful, and we all wanted to have a little party to celebrate. And so we were doing that. We couldn't find Peter, and we found him eventually back in his room, rewriting his thesis that was already accepted because he got some comments from the professors, and he wanted to make it better, even though it was already a done thing. I think that speaks to Peter. He was a bit of they say he was meticulous, but he was also a bit of a perfectionist in that regard, always wanting to make something better than it could be.
How do his accomplishments affect the world today?
Well, one of the satisfying things about the profession that both Peter and I were involved in is that it was building large infrastructure projects that affect thousands, tens of thousands of people on a daily basis. So there are, let's say that project in New Jersey, in the future that project around 30th Street Station in Pennsylvania, a number of other projects around the country. His work makes their lives better every day as they use the facilities to commute, to do their other personal business.
Why do you think he was deserving of the title Distinguished Alumni?
Well, I think it's the sum of a lot of things he accomplished in his life. It was not just professional, but it was also just the way he interacted with people. He had a successful life in that he had a lot of people who respected him both professionally and particularly as a person. He had a tremendous number of friends. I think his ability to interact with all types of people and his ability to really get things done. I was aware of his work with the food co-op down in suburban Philadelphia, where he and Beth lived a good part of their lives, and was a real mainstay in getting that going and making it work. So, he's deserving because he lived a good life, and that it affected a lot of people in a lot of different forms.
What project was he most proud of?
Oh, I would think it would be the project around 30th Street Station in Philadelphia, where that was a tremendous undertaking, having to bring together so many different perspectives, whether it was the Amtrak Railroad who owned the property, all the stakeholders and other groups around the station. So it was, I think that one to me was really the culmination of his abilities and his skills, and I think is the one that he would be most proud of.
Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us on behalf of the late Peter Denitz.
Okay. Well, good we could get it all done in one take.